All right, so here's what we're going to talk about now. We're talking about significant figures, otherwise called sig figs, or even sig digs, significant digits. They really mean the same thing. Okay, so sig figs or sig digs, significant figures, significant digits, same term. Don't worry too much about it. All right, so here's what we're going to do is we're going to talk about what the rules are and how to identify them, and then we're going to go through some examples. Hopefully it'll help you out a little bit. All right, so what I'll do is I'll give a little heads up and a pause. So what you should do once we do practice, I'll stop. I'll say, here's where you should stop the film and do your practice ones and then check your answers. Okay, so here we go. First rules. Rules for significant figures. Okay, there's probably about 3 basic rules, but some people could sum it up into one. All right, first one. First rule. All non-zeros count. All right, so all non-zeros count, and I believe non-zeros are called integers. Did I spell it right? It might be A there. I forget. All right, so integers. So all integers count. So basically 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All those numbers count. All right, all non-zeros count. So an example of a non-zero would be 2. Okay, that's a non-zero. Also 25. Okay, that would be another non-zero. Let's even go for a third one. 30. Wait a minute. This says all non-zeros count. So according to our rule as of right now, only the 3 counts, the 0 does not. The 0 is a placeholder. So there's only one significant 0 according to our first rule. All right, so all non-zeros count. Here's some examples. Remember, zeros don't count. All right, so second rule. So we got non-zeros. Second rule. With a decimal, okay, there has to be a decimal. Keyword, with a decimal. And zeros count. Keywords with a decimal. All right, so let's do an example. Let's say 20 with 20.0. Let's say it's grams. 20.0. N zeros count. N zeros means furthest to the right in a number. So this 0 counts, and there's also another 0 that counts. All right, because these are technically both N zeros. Right, because they're furthest to the right. So this N0 counts, this 0 counts. Another example would be something like, let's say you see 25.80, I'm going to go liters. That N0 counts, so this would be 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. These are non-zeros, they count. And don't think like this decimal is a stopping point. It really doesn't matter where the decimal is. The fact that it has a decimal is probably the more important factor. So N zeros count. So this would be count 2, 3, 4. And what this tells us, okay, what this tells us is where we're measuring to, what degree of precision we're measuring to. And also the last one, sandwiched zeros count. What do I mean by sandwiched zeros? Well, if I have 101 grams, that 0 is between 2 integers or non-zeros. It counts when it's sandwiched in between. All right. Another one would be something like 20.01. We'll go meters. Those are sandwiched because they're either way. Doesn't matter where the decimal is. They're still sandwiched between the 2 and the 1. So those count. So this would be 4 significant figures, and we're measuring to the 100th. Okay. So there's your general rules for identifying how many significant figures you have. All right, and then we're going to go over some examples of how to figure it out. So first, this is where you should stop the film and go through a couple of them in the practice part, right down here. So right now, this one will tell you what you're doing here. Okay, so that, whoops, so you can't see that. These rules will tell you for this. All right, so stop the film, go through them, come back when you're ready to go. All right, so here is how it works out. We have a number with obviously a label. Figure out what it's measuring to. In other words, where the significant figure that is the last significant figure is measuring at, and how many significant figures. So for this number, 2,000, okay, only non-zeros count. So therefore just the 2 counts. And what am I measuring to? I'm measuring to the thousands. Okay, so I'm measuring to the thousands. How many significant figures? 1. All right, this one. What's my precision? Well, now I have a 2 and a 1. That 1 is measured in the hundreds. Okay, so I'm measuring in the hundreds. How many significant figures? 2. The 2 and the 1. Now we have 2,000 with a decimal. Remember, n zeros count. They don't have to be to the right of it, but they have to be at the end. So all these zeros count because they're all n zeros. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4. We have 4 significant figures. And where's that last significant figure measuring? Well, it's measuring to the ones. It's in the ones place. 30.0 grams, sandwich to n zeros with a decimal. Okay, we had decimal, so n zeros count. So there's 3. They're all 3 count. And where's the last one measuring? Well, if you don't know your little place keeper, I have one in the notes, I believe, on the... There's my place chart. Right there. So that place chart, if you don't remember them, where the places are, I may write it down somewhere. But most of you guys should know that stuff. So 10 hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, millions. So this one, right here, is to the tenths. Right? Did I measure to the tenths? Yep, tenths. Phew. Tenths, 3 significant figures. This one, decimal points and zeros, 4 significant figures. This one's measured to the tens. See, I'm even using this myself. Hundredths. Okay, it's the hundredths because it's a decimal. Next one. We have no decimal. 0 doesn't count. It's not a sandwich 0 either. So we have 2, the 3 and the 2 count. And the 2 is in the 10 spot. Tens. 460, decimal place, n zeros count. So they're all 3 count, and it's measured to the ones. Ooh, 371.040. We have a sandwich 0, which is sandwich, so it counts. And we have an n 0 because there's a decimal, so the n zeros count. So how many are there? There's 6. All of them count. And the last significant figure is measured to the 10th, hundredths, thousandths. All right, so there you go for that one. Let's try this next line over here. Here we have numbers in front. These aren't at the end. These are in front. Okay, so the front ones don't count. They have to be at the end. So the 3 and the n 0 counts. So there's only 2 significant figures. And the last one is measured to the thousands. Oops. Then we have this decimal. Front zeros, no n zeros. Only 1 significant figure. That 1 is the only one that counts because everything is not at the end. All right. And it's measured to the thousands again. Now we have a sandwich 0. We have a decimal with a sandwich 0 and an n 0. All these ones count. The ones in front don't. So there's 4. The 1, the 0, the 2, and the 0. And that last 0 is to the... So we've got thousands, so it'd be 10,000s. Decimal place, front zeros don't count. Only the 3 and the 2 count, so we have a 2. So we go 10th, hundredths, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s? Yep, I think it's 100,000. I was getting my decimal put up. Yep, 100,000s. So this is 100,000s. Squeaking into the other lines here. So only the 3 and the 2 count. The rest of these don't count because they're front zeros. They're not end zeros. They have to be end zeros. The 1, 2, 3, 0. Well, here's a decimal. End zeros count. There's no sandwich 0, so the 1, 2, 3 and the 0 count. So it's 4. And that would be to the 10,000s. 10,000. Sorry if it's scribbly. 9.0. Well, there's decimal and there's an end zero. So there's two significant figures, the 9 and the 0 count, and that last one is to the tens. 9.00. Still all end zeros, and because there's a decimal, so these are all end zeros. So now there's 3, and that's going to be to the hundredths. Oops. Then we have 4210. There's no decimal, so therefore the end zero does not count. That has to be a written decimal. If there's not a written decimal, it doesn't count. So just 3, the 4, the 2, and the 1. And that's measured to the tens. All right, so 10, not tenths. So there you go. There's how to identify. There's some practice. You'll get some more practice in class. All right, but there's a general